All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another deep dive. And today, super excited. I have with me Billy from Intuition.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We'd love to I don't even know how to describe intuition as far as like a one word. Usually I do like it's an oracle, it's a bridge. This one isn't one of those things that's necessarily as easy. So maybe like if you had like a few words, what would you say? Like a trust system, I guess you could say.
I do like that. And we've been looking for the one word for a very long time. So if you figure out a word or even a set of words that accurately describe what the heck we're doing, that would be amazing. So that continues to be a work in progress for us. But I guess like some words that maybe help articulate what the heck we're doing. Um, One set of words I've started saying like the trustful or trusted interaction layer. Another set of words is general purpose oracle or
Okay.
like subjective stuff. Another set of words is like sustainable yield farms for human knowledge. I don't know. There's like we've got like a
Call it a
laundry list.
marketplace, right?
Yeah. Or like a TCR for everything, like meta TCR. There's like 55 one-liners at all. Like one was like the Git for knowledge. I thought that one was pretty cool. Polygon came up with that one. But yeah, there's a lot of them. I don't really know how to summarize it in those words. That we're working with like smart people to figure that out. But hopefully the explainer can come through our conversation today.
For sure. We'll at the end of the video, we'll have to say a one word. I'll see if I
I
can.
like, yeah, dude, let's do that. That's a great
Yeah.
idea.
But I guess, how did you get into kind of building this? What was sort of the problem that you had sort of seen?
Yeah, so it's actually quite nice because the backstory also helps frame where we're going. So I guess like little TLDR about me. I'm Billy, did my undergrad in systems engineering. Been in crypto for a long time. Been involved with Ethereum since March of 2014. Around the same time, I won't bore you with details of all of this stuff, but helped start the blockchain consulting practice at Ernst and Young, and then joined Consensus. I'm still an advisor to Consensus. I've been there 7 years. Over that time, did a bunch of identity stuff. And so whenever I kind of architect a system, I kind of have like this identity slant just because I know how like important decentralized identity is and self-sovereign identity and user-centric data is to like anything that you're building. And so that's kind of why all my things kind of take this slant. And so where intuition specifically arose from was last cycle, I was doing a ton of angel investing and advisory stuff. And my unique value prop to people was, hey, let me connect the dots for you. Let me tell you who's come before, who exists now, best practices, tooling, things like that. And that was awesome. It was great. But then I was on all these calls all the time. I didn't like the calls. And I was like, ooh, how can I like disintermediate myself here a little bit? And so what I did was I just like took my mind map of Web3 and I put it into this like visual knowledge graph that you could navigate yourself. So instead of needing to come to me to ask me like, hey, do you know this a person on this layer two team? You could go to like the layer two circle and click on that and see the teams. Click on the teams, you see the people, click on people, see information about them. And that was great. And so then I started using this to kind of keep track of my own stuff because it was height of the cycle. There's infinite things happening at infinite times, and there was just too much to be able to keep track of just in my head. And so I needed something to be able to like categorize things and map things. And I mean, to this day, but even back then it was even worse. But I had 1,000 browser tabs open, a million bookmarks I've literally never gone back to. I use Roam Research to take notes and I tag things with things properly sometimes, but it's just like not a great tool for like what I was trying to do. So I just started using this knowledge graph to keep track of my own stuff because it's like, okay, I got a bridge over to Avalanche. Like, what is the bridge that I use? And then when I get there, the AMM is no longer Uniswap and SushiSwap. It's like Trader Joe and Pangolin Swap or whatever. Like, I don't remember
Excellent.
this. And so it's like, I just started keeping track of my own stuff in here. And for like all my portcos and my clients and my friends, they just had all this information at their disposal. And I was like, this is pretty cool. But imagine if it wasn't just my knowledge in the knowledge graph. What if like everyone could contribute information to the knowledge graph? And what if people were incentivized to add good data to the knowledge graph? That'd be pretty interesting. And the more I thought about it, the more obsessed I got with it. And I was like, oh my God, like this isn't just useful for like Web3 advisory stuff. This is used for like the world. And it's kind of applicable to everything. And so that's where intuition came from. It's also where it's going. It's this open, permissionless, decentralized semantic knowledge graph composed of verifiable data about things. So that is like, I guess, the many words I use to describe it accurately, but also like people don't know what the heck that means. So yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, no, that's a cool way. Like maybe we can I'll probably just start drawing it, and maybe we can go through a problem statement to see, like, like I guess the easy one, the classic one for this would probably be what, identity, or you could even do an easier one like an oracle, right?
Yeah, so I think like let me frame things a little bit more to start. So,
Okay.
and you can draw while I do this. I don't know how good of a drawer you are, but there's there's like three, I think, main distinct problems that I think of when I think of like what we're trying to do. So first, you've got identity fragmentation, you've got data fragmentation, and then you've got like a lack of expression. And so let's start with like identity fragmentation. Basically, like as you're probably aware, like every single thing has so many disparate digital identities. We as people, we have hundreds. Every new app we sign up for, we create a new identity for that context, and then we generate data and reputation that only lives within that context. So I can't take my 5-star Uber reputation and rent an Airbnb, or I can't take my 20-year reputation with Bank of America and get an undercollateralized loan in DeFi, or open an account at Wells Fargo, or do anything with it. But it's not just people. Um, let's take, for instance, like you are trying to sell a used car online, at least in the US. Like what you do is you create a bunch of digital identities for the car in the form of listings on all these various platforms. So you create the eBay identity and the Craigslist identity and the Auto Trader and the CarMax. Every single time you fill out the same information, it's not very good information. And then like people who want to find used cars for sale have to go to these application specific contexts to query for the cars for sale that match their criteria, unless there's some aggregator of this type of information. So like, what if instead of that, the car just had like a single decentralized identifier and then structured semantic metadata about it in the form of attestations? Then it's like, okay, car was sold to this person, mechanic works on the car. They attest that they worked on it and
Right.
did this work. And then you, as the owner of the car, could like toggle a for sale Boolean to true, and anyone could query at the layer of the internet for all cars for sale that match our criteria instead of querying within these application specific silos. And one more example before I also give some like thoughts on drawing stuff. Like
I'm setting the base. This is like a base smart
I love
contract
it. No,
interaction. We're
it's
good.
amazing. Yeah. So one more important example is stuff that doesn't even have like a unique identifier that I want to use to reference it. So car is easy. It's got like a VIN number. We could use that. But like, what about the concept Ethereum? Like, let's say I want to make an attestation about Ethereum itself. Like, what is the unique identifier I use? Is it the website? Is it the LinkedIn profile? Is it the Twitter profile? Like, is it the Wikipedia page? Like, I actually don't know right now. And so first thing I want to, like, I think we got to do is we have to like arrive at social consensus around what the globally persistent canonical identifiers are going to be that we're going to use to reference different things on the web. And then we can start attaching data to them. So that's like step one, is this identity fragmentation problem. And we
I mean,
just
like
need to
IPFS, you could say, like, tries to solve this a little bit. They like the web hashable content. Like you just hash the contents of it. It's a
yeah,
unique identifier, but then it's like pointless as far as mapping it to it goes. So
yeah, that's a piece of it for sure. And that's a piece of the puzzle. But what I think like even beyond that, so like let's say a stupid example I like to give is, let's say you've got Pepe coin contract. You might have 1,000 contracts that look exactly the same, and the hash of them might be exactly the same, unless you take like a timestamp of when they were deployed and deployed, whatever. You can get a unique hash. But then it's like, okay, let's even say we've got 10,000 unique hashes for a thing called Pepe coin. Which is the canonical Pepe coin?
right.
And the answer is it's the one that the market decides. It's the one with the biggest market cap, or like the ones that your friends are buying. It's like social consensus around what the unique identifier is going to be. Like most, they look like pretty much the same, technically, fundamentally, but you just like we start arriving at social consensus around like what the identifier is going to be. So I think that's kind of where the magic happens a little bit. even though there's other magic happening too.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into some hard examples maybe later.
Yeah.
But like I think for the basics of how it actually works, like I'm guessing you guys have a smart contract on a system, correct?
Correct. Yep.
What would it be? I guess what chains are you guys going on? Polygon? I know you had mentioned that earlier.
So like kind of similarly to you can think of a lot of what we're doing as maybe even like EAS or an extension to EAS. So similar to EAS, like hopefully everywhere.
Okay.
Although I think the ultimate end state is being in one place and then being able to atomically read and update state from wherever you are. So like at the beginning, we're going to get this fragmentation by probably deploying to many places. We're going to start with base. We'll actually be deployed to base
Oh, cool.
relatively soon. Alpha leak. But yeah, like this, I think this needs to be available everywhere.
And then
But
do
to
you
make
guys use EAS?
like it's not a dependency, but it is like a supplemental thing, I guess. It's like you can think of it as a piece of this big puzzle that we're all building together in this like weird intersection of identity and data and finance and such.
Yeah. So I guess like the basics of this, with the used car example, we have a smart contract on base, and people start saying things about it. So you know, kind of I think you've said this before, like the identity problem as far as like a little bit is solved for the person because you're just tied to your address. So like you have an address, and then you would say like this could be the mechanic. You would say I fixed this car. This would be a purchaser. I bought this car on this date. This would be you. I want to sell my car or something like that, and then everybody could just see it, and it would all be there, and it would be cool, right?
And that's I think that's the big it's one of the big unlocks where it's like, okay, let's take Web 2, for example. People can say things about things, but then like the data is stored in many different places. And so instead of the data being kind of like platform specific, we kind of invert the model and make the data like agent centric. So it's like when when the arrows are going to the thing, that's like one spot where in the fulcrum point is the entity itself, as opposed to like the fulcrum point around which data aggregates being the platform or the platform specific account
Right.
for the.
Yeah, and so then you would have another contract that would have, like this would be like, I don't know, like it could be like the CarMax contract, and it would grab attestations from everything, but it would and then it would put it here for the listing, right?
Mhm.
So it would say aggregate. It would aggregate all of these. So it would go and grab these people's and put them into its contract, and then it would be able to use it. But then the question would be like, well, like what happens if somebody puts on a bad review? Like if you have a malicious guy, then
Yep.
I guess CarMax just wouldn't do it. Would be the answer.
That is the answer. You answered it. It's like anyone can say anything about anything, just like in real life. Like anyone can say anything in person, anyone can say anything on Twitter you can say for the most part. But like
Right.
you just listen to the voices you trust. And so CarMax can be like, okay, I only care when like these people say something, or I only care about this data. And you don't filter it at the protocol layer, you filter it like higher up the stack at kind of like the middleware and application layers. And so that's exactly what it would be. It'd be like, okay, maybe there's 10, this is a bad example. Maybe there's 10 mechanics that CarMax trusts.
Right.
And it's like, has any one of these 10 mechanics said something about this thing?
Yeah, and then I mean, I guess this would all work if it's like all on base. But then like how do you I guess how would you handle you have some attestations on Polygon, some on base, even some say off chain. Like there's probably other information you want to aggregate. Have you guys thought about
Yeah.
like what would that look like putting it on?
So the way that you can kind of view this architecture is what is stored on chain is we call them atoms and triples, and we use them intentionally as words that don't really mean anything in this context so that there's no preconceived notions. But an atom is like an identity of a thing, and then a triple is a composition of three atoms. And triple actually has a meaning because it means RDF triple or semantic triple. But you've got an atom, identity. So atom is, yeah, exactly. So an atom can represent anything. It can represent a person. It can represent an organization, a place, a thing, a word.
So
Like
this is like the unique identifier. It's the
that's a
atom.
unique identifier. Yep. So the atoms are the unique identifiers, and then the triples are compositions of unique identifiers. So, like, let's say I want to say like Bob is trustworthy. Bob has a unique. Bob has an atom. The word is has an atom. The word trustworthy has an atom. And then the composition of those three things together in semantic triple format creates a statement. Bob is trustworthy. Then you can use those triples as atoms in other triples. So Bob is trustworthy can be an atom in another triple. It'd be like Bob is trustworthy is true. Bob is trustworthy is false. So you can form these like arbitrarily complex statements just using these like two very simple primitives. And so the way this works is like what's stored on chain are the like URIs of the atoms and then the relationships between them in the form of the triples. So kind of like think of it like neural network format. You just have nodes and edges stored on chain. And the nodes and the edges have URIs that point to some off-chain data somewhere. It can be anywhere, but off-chain data somewhere. So on-chain, you've just got like things and the mappings between things. And then you have weight, which is in the form of stake. And then off-chain, you have like the actual data that describes these things. And that can live in IPFS, it can live in Arweave, it can live on any blockchain or any data availability layer. It can live in a personal identity hub. It doesn't matter. So you kind of have like all of these verifiable data registries with like this semantic mapping of data and its relationship to other data stored on chain.
So like the example here with the car one would be like, if he said he fixed the car, then he would put in IPFS, he would go store the receipts or whatever.
Correct. Yeah. He could even just
The actual data.
the actual data. Yeah. He could put it in IPFS. That'd be quite nice because that's like our most supported happy path right now. Or you could put but you could also put it like somewhere else and just like so long as it's resolvable, it can live kind of anywhere. But yeah, it'd be
Yep.
like, yep.
Okay, and now I guess the one question, like it sounds good. Like if we only had just one home for all the data, we could all just read it, and this would be amazing. The obvious question is like, okay, well, like how do we incentivize people to actually put it on here? Because like base costs money, right? So
That's the one of the big questions that I think we have like hypothetical answers for that I'm very excited to test out whether or not the hypotheses hold true. So I think the way that we get data into the system, there's many ways. So the super low hanging fruit stuff is like, oh, you just scrape Web 2, or you just scrape Web 3, or you have people port over data from Web 2. That's easy. But what I really care about is all the stuff that's not expressed yet. It's all this information that's mainly in people's heads. So I've never written an Amazon review. I've never written a Yelp review. I've never done a LinkedIn endorsement. I do 5 stars on Uber every time because I don't care. I've never read Wikipedia. And if you look at the data, like something crazy, like 97% of people aren't contributing data to these platforms. And then conversely, like all of us are using this data to make decisions every day. Like even me as someone trying to solve the problem, I still go to Amazon and I still say, oh, 5 stars, 10,000 reviews. Obviously, I'm buying this one, even though I know the data's flawed because I don't know who's expressing that sentiment. And so the problem's not that the data doesn't exist. It's that the data exists in our heads. Because like going back to where this all came from, my angel investing advisory stuff, if you come to me and you ask me about a person I've met or a restaurant I've been to or a product I've bought on Amazon and used, I can tell you about it and I'm happy to tell you about it, but we have to have a conversation. And so there's something wrong here. Like there's all this data that's only in people's heads. So the question's like, how the heck do we get that stuff out there? How do we get your intuition out there? This is why it's called intuition. It's like, how do we extract people's intuition and make it like available in the digital realm? And so there's kind of these 4 pillars of incentives that I think we can use, which are each good levers in their own individual right. So if you view anyone individually, it's kind of compelling, but if you view them all in their entirety, it's like even more compelling. So I'll try to quickly move through these, but the 4 pillars, like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, continue.
Yeah, we've got reputational, we've got economic, we've got
Okay.
like functional/utility, and then we've got educational, in no particular order. And so let's take reputation first, just because it's first on the list. So one of the reasons I don't express myself on a platform like Amazon is because I don't care about my Amazon reputation. Like I can still buy whatever I want without ever having expressed anything about any product. I'm not a seller, so my reputation doesn't matter, even in the context of Amazon, let alone outside the context of Amazon. Like I can't take the fact that I'm a good reviewer on Amazon and get an under collateralized loan in DeFi or like authenticate into some platform or do anything. So why would I care about my reputation? Once you make reputation portable, that all changes. So what if some system or someone somewhere cares that you have a high reputation in the context of Amazon? Then maybe I care a little bit more. Maybe I care about like the reputation I'm generating within different contexts because that reputation is now portable and I can use it elsewhere. So maybe I can take like the fact that I'm a good reviewer on Amazon and Yelp and something else, and that means something to someone. Like maybe I can like collateralize something with it. Maybe I can like, you know, secure an AVS with it. Shout out Eigenlayer. Like who knows? Like securing things with our reputation, that's pretty interesting. Right now, the reputation siloed to platforms, so you can't really do that. But what if the reputation could escape the platform specific silo? So that's one reason I might want to do it.
Yeah, no,
Repu-
it made me think like the old saying, like, like you should, you can judge a girl based on how she treats like waiters, or judge a guy how he treats like a
exactly.
waitress, and then it's like
Yep.
now you can have that reputation
And
ported to your dating app.
there's going to be overlaps that we don't even know. Like that's what I'm super excited about that, where it's like that's it. That's like a good overlap, and then there's probably going to be like a million other overlaps we haven't thought of, where it's like, oh well, because this person was like highly reputable over here, like he's probably like good at this thing. I don't know. AI will help us figure all that shit out.
But
So
I mean, you could say like to counteract the point, like on even Amazon or Google reviews, like
yeah,
Amazon reviews are okay, right? You know what? Like for the most part, like if it has 5 stars and 10,000 reviews, like probably pretty good, right? So like which may actually be an argument for this in the sense that like even just voluntary reporting works relatively okay. Like I think this is something like crypto people tend to get too caught up on, is like, it doesn't have $8 billion behind it as far as when they said it.
yeah.
You're like, no, it's probably okay.
Yeah. No,
But
that's actually a really good point. And I think that like we see decent results with it, which is amazing. And it's actually like you said, it's kind of an argument for this pillar. It's like some people just want to do it. And maybe those people fall into like I can't, they have to have some reason for doing it. And I think most of the people doing it now fall into actually the educational basket. Because like I don't think that they're trying to build actually, I don't know if this is still a thing, but there used to be like Yelp power users, and you used to get like special benefits if you were a Yelp power reviewer. So those people doing it probably for the reputation.
farming
Um,
points on Yelp.
Farming points, yeah, the original points. So also another reason you might want to say something about something. Let me broaden the category. I don't want to box it into
No,
being
please.
just review. You want to say something about something because clout. So I would love like verifiable evidence that I was saying, hey, you should probably buy some ETH back in 2014. I don't have that anywhere. Like all I have is like hearsay or like centralized, like posts on centralized platforms. I just want like verifiable evidence of me saying something at some point in time. I think that'd be pretty cool. And you could build like a history or a good reputation of being someone who claims useful truths about things early. New social game that gets created. So maybe that's why you want to claim stuff about things. Who knows? So that's one pillar. The economic one is the most interesting and the hardest. So I'll skip that one for now, but we'll come back to it. Let's go to educational because you kind of touched on it. So it's like maybe I want to express myself about things because I want to help my fellow man slash woman. Or I'm just like an educator persona, like an Asa Griffith of the world, where it's like I just love educating people on things, or I'm a blogger or whatever. What I think is really interesting is one reason I don't. I'm just going to keep using Amazon as an example because it's so easy. But like one reason I don't leave reviews on Amazon is because I have 0 degree of confidence that the people I care about are going to see it. It's going to get lost in the sea of infinite anonymous reviewers. I don't have an Amazon friends list. I don't have an Amazon social graph. And so like I can't see the stuff my friends are saying. They can't see the stuff I'm saying, which just seems kind of broken. And so what I think might happen if you operate in this new paradigm is like people will express themselves more on these platforms because the people they care about will see those things. Because they're already doing it. They're just doing it via like text message or conversation. But then you have to like scroll up in the group chat and be like, oh damn, like what's the product that guy recommended? Like I just want that data at the point of interaction, which would be way more efficient. So I think that if we can like import our trust graphs to places, I don't even want to call them social graphs, just like import our trust graphs, like people will maybe express themselves a little bit more on these platforms because their voice will be getting heard by the people that they care about. And it just like feels better when you get like have this feedback loop of making a difference. Maybe one of those friends reaches out to you and they're like, hey, like thank you for leaving that review on that thing because that like really helped me out. That's a dope product. So that's the educational basket. Does that make kind of sense?
For sure. Yeah, no, I mean, well, this one like is sort of, it almost like counteracts the reputational one in some sense, like and probably the economic one as well, because like that's like I was thinking about like kind of you had brought up at the beginning, like you were the, a token consultant basically, or whatever your job was, where you are a connector, where you would give people tips and things like that, and you would want to democratize it, and that's great. But most people do not want to democratize it and share. Like most people like hold it tight and make you pay them money to talk to you, like in a lot of ways. And so it's like that it's one of these things like how do you sort of incentivize people to get over that and say like maybe it is just like this is a better community and hopefully we just get better people that aren't doing that, which may be fair. I don't know.
That's why you got to view them all together. Like you
Okay.
view each one individually, and you're like, well, that kind of makes sense. Some flaws there, but then you view them all together, and you're like, oh, that one answers the problems of the other one. Maybe we'll see. Just hypotheses we're testing. Um, Functional is maybe I want to say things about things because it's useful to me. So going back to the angel investing advisory knowledge graph thing, I was just capturing stuff in there not for anyone else, not for reputation or education, just because like it was useful to me. And by proxy, it built my reputation and educated people. But I was just capturing because it's the best tool available to organize my own life. And so if we can just like solve a pain point for people, then they'll do it. Like if it's useful to them, like for instance, ultimate end state I'd love to get to. We're not there. We're not even close to there yet. But it's like imagine like integrated in the payment flow at a restaurant. You're going to check out, like, okay, now payment flows are Web3 integrated. At the end of the flow, it's just like, hey, do you want to like attest that this is like a good restaurant or something? And by doing it, it's going to get added to your list of restaurants in this area and just like get all the info for you. It's like, I'm going to click the button to do it because I want to keep track of this place so I can come back to it later or like remember that I went there or something. And so
Right.
it's going to do it for me.
Well, I mean, what the example I thought of, like, which is probably a great one in almost all these categories, is Stack Overflow. You know, everyone doing it. Like, there's so many times I Google a question on like Ethereum Stack Overflow, and like I answered it 3 years ago, and I'm like, oh, this is this is weird. But I think in the same way, like people, yeah, people do things to kind of help themselves in some ways.
Yeah. And I guess you can view all of the things as helping yourself if you want to get esoteric about it. But anyway, I
Sure.
think it's a nice or like it's a nice delineation between the three, four that we've got. Um, okay. The final one's the economic piece. So it's like, I don't think that it's really hard to make this appeal to everyone because like the dollar amounts you'll probably be dealing with are like relatively low unless you want to make the cost of creating data super high, which you probably don't want to do. But it's like, ooh, what if I could get like rewarded economically for expressing myself about things, or like economically rewarded if I create useful data? So I think that's one of the main innovations here. And what we do is everyone asks like, oh, how do you determine what's good data or useful data or what's true or false or right or wrong? And the answer is that you don't. Like as soon as you start playing that game, it's like it's a game that's not the game that I want to be playing. It's this weird game of censorship and opinionation, and that's not what we're doing. So the economic piece, um, you can kind of like bifurcate it into reads and writes. And so for the reads of the data, it's quite simple. It's like, okay, let's say we have this unified verifiable. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yep. You already got it. It's like, all right, we've got this like single unified verifiable data lake where we have provable attribution of who created the data in the first place because they signed the data with their private key. So now we can just flow revenue back to the person who created the data in the first place. So maybe it's like a cost per query, maybe it's 1 cent per query. Person gets a fraction of a penny for having created the data, but like maybe over time that adds up, especially if you're a business. So I'll pause there. Does that kind of make sense?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, so like let's say you're Google and or not Google. Say you're a restaurant and you want to, and you have your contract over here and you want people to attest to reviews, right? Um, the big questions would be is like, a like how do you sort of pick the people? Like is there some sort of, because I feel like in a lot of ways, like if you have this way of picking them, like you could exclude certain people, bad reviews, and you would only pick ones that you like, or would you need some sort of trustless aggregator layer? Um, yeah,
I think you need, and again, this part's pretty early, so I'm just like, we're building things in the absence of having an answer to this piece of the equation, but it's like I think you need the opinionated aggregators. I don't think there's one, but I think there's many. And like maybe you can opt into which one you want to use. But I think that's a very good question. You can take either the opinionated approach or the unopinionated approach. You can say, and I think only the opinionated approach works at this layer of the stack. Because if it's unopinionated, people just like bot it and farm it and copy create data and then have the revenue flow to them because they created the same data as the people who actually are creating it. So I think
right,
you've got to go to the opinionated approach. And so you can like maybe I'm just thinking of this now, but maybe you force a cost. Like there has to be some cost to doing things. Otherwise, you're going to get DDoSed and Sybil attacked into the ground. So
right,
it has to be a cost. Maybe the cost has to go somewhere. Maybe it can only go to like some people, and then you have to pick like which people it goes to, and maybe you can like probably you'll form cartels and form these back end deals if in that worldview. But like anyway, it's a really good question. But I do think that you have to have someone to help you filter the the revenue on the read side of this equation. Um, and so yeah, good question. I'm not going to pretend I have the ultimate answer for that one
no,
right
I
now.
mean, I'll spitball my product I'm working on with you, which maybe we can use intuition on it. You can help me. So we're trying to build the CPI with Teller. Like how do you do a decentralized CPI? It's very, very similar. And so you would just have basically people would throw out prices, right? So everyone throws out prices. Let's say it's like a very specific one, the price of milk for this region, and it's a specific price. And then we will us as tellers or reporters, your job is somebody will incentivize you to say go grab all of the attestations and aggregate it, and then we get multiple people to do that, and then you're basically the teller reporters are the ones that have stake and can be slashed if they lie. So they, like if they didn't do it, if somebody raises a dispute, then you would say like, where did you get this data? Go, present your rationale for choosing these folks. Um, that's the
That
current
makes total,
that's the current plan.
no, that makes total sense. And actually, I think I got the answer. Thank you for like this is great. All right, so we can slash people economically or we can slash them reputationally. And so like maybe like what you're building comes in on the economic side, which I think is a really powerful lever to pull to get people to act in the right. Like crypto has proven that like people will act in their own financial best interest. So that makes total sense. we can also play the reputation game and say, hey, you can only earn revenue if your reputation like exceeds this amount. And then people can like attest that you're a bad actor, or like if they can, maybe if they can prove that you did something maliciously or something, then you get like bad reputation attributed with you, and your reputation falls below the threshold. And so you don't get the revenue stream
So,
to you.
so are you guys gonna be measuring reputation? Like, is this like, because like the original reputation is what it's Augur. It's just like it's an ERC20 token, and you buy and sell
Ha!
reputation.
Yeah,
Like this
yeah.
is not that reputation, right?
It's not that reputation, no, but I still have that reputation. I didn't even migrate it to V2. I think it was V2, but yeah, it's got that rep.
No, so sad,
Yeah,
Augur.
so sad. I know. I was so bullish. Um, but yeah, no, not that reputation, but like your reputation is, I think, like a composition of everything that you do, and then also like everything that like people claim about you. So that it, like when I talk about reputation, I think that's your reputation. And we're not really interested in playing the game of like specific reputation scores. All we do is let people say things about things in like a data structure that I feel like is very useful in creating reputation models. So the thought is, yes, maybe we'll have some reference implementations of like reputation models you code build on top. Um, but we don't want to play that game. Like people, the game's so hard to play because it's reputation is both relative and contextual. Like it's relative in the sense that it is in from the perspective of the observer, and it's contextual in the sense that it's like reputation doesn't carry explicitly across context. And I think that's the trap everyone falls into. They're like, what's the
Right.
reputation score of this thing? It's like, in what context? Like my reputation in the context of sports is zero. I don't know anything about sports, but Web3 may be high reputation because I know things about that. Um, and then also like someone who knows me in Web3, my reputation should be higher for them than someone who doesn't know me. Maybe I'm like 4 degrees of separation for someone else. So it's like, it's such a hard thing to quantify. Someone is going to figure it out. Probably not going to be us, but we're just like providing the picks and the shovels to be able to build those things more easily.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like it would be because like I think that would be like for like the CPI example, then back to like how do you pick who to include in the reviews? The
Yeah,
obvious answer would be like you would need some sort of reputational scoring.
yeah,
And you pick the highest people with the best reputation. And so it would just be like, yeah, I mean, how do we do social scores in
yeah.
Web3? I don't know. But yeah, I'm super curious to see what that kind of looks like.
Yeah, I think it gets Black Mirror very fast if we do it wrong. So we got to make sure we do it right. But I think that like it becomes a like kind of a workshopping exercise with each use case, because it's like CPI reputation. Like let's figure it out. Like what metrics do we care about? There's
Right.
probably going to be overlaps with other things that have already created reputation scores, but it's probably going to be relatively unique if we want to try to do it approximately correctly. So it's like it's almost like every use case is going to need its own reputation score slash model. And so yeah, it's hard to kind of like reason about universally. And maybe there's some team that does like some that's where you start getting scary, I think, is like the universal
Well, I
credit
mean,
scores.
even like one of the hard part with like the CPI piece is like if you want like a globalized price index, you actually want people to have high reputation in the local region that you actually care about. So
Yep.
you would hope that like like because if I wanted the price of milk in India right now, like if you told me that, maybe you're in India right now. I don't think so, but like I would probably not believe you versus if somebody
Yeah,
had a high reputation in India. So like you could potentially
that's a good
go,
point. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. No, I like it.
I can finish the
Please. We're
yeah,
still
let me
not
finish.
done with the pillars.
Yeah, sorry, there's a lot of pillars, there's pieces of each pillar. So within that economic pillar, we talked about reads and monetizing them. I guess another nice example of that is maybe I really like this use case actually. So let's say I'm betting on a basketball game, and I know that LeBron James is playing in the game. And I go to LeBron James's profile and I see Apple has attested to sleep recovery score of LeBron James last night. I can't see the data. Data's encrypted, but I can see the fact that like data exists around this data point. And I know it looks like now that Apple has its aggregated identity, I know that this is Apple. I know that they're attesting a sleep recovery score. I just don't know the data yet. I want to request that data. I don't know who I'm requesting it from. It might be requesting it from Apple, might be requesting it from LeBron, probably LeBron in our worldview. But it's like, hey, LeBron, like, I'll give you $5 to give me your Apple sleep recovery score from last night. He's like, yeah, for sure. Payment happens. Maybe I give him the data. Maybe I let it, or like maybe he gives me the data. Maybe he lets me run computation over the encrypted data. Who knows? But like those flows of monetization of data, I think are so important. And that's, I still consider that on the read side of the equation, where it's like, maybe you want to create more data in whatever way you're creating it. Maybe even if you're not the attester, you're creating it because you're LeBron James wearing the Apple Watch. But now you can like monetize it without friction. You're not going to like package it up and go sell it to some advertiser. It's like you don't have the manpower to do that. You can, but we can create these programmatic flows of monetization. Becomes real interesting real quick.
For sure. No, I mean, I was even thinking just, like background checks would be something you could potentially do.
That's a great one. Yeah. That's actually a really good one. And then on the right side, this is like our answer to the economic problem in the immediate term. So it's like simple parallel example is let's say I watch a YouTube video and I'm like, wow, this is a piece of content worth consuming. Right now, my reaction is, sweet. I've never liked one. I don't like like I'm not, why would I like it? But what if like if I was an
Needs them
early
for
level
later. That's how I you can go back.
utility, functional,
Yeah, you can
functional
go back and
pillar.
look at all your liked
Yeah.
videos if you want to listen.
I've never done that, but that's smart. And that falls into the functional pillar. So maybe you're liking because it's useful to you some point later. I never thought about that. I probably should have thought about that, but I've never done it. But like, what if, you see that the video only has 100 likes so far, and you're like, oh, this thing's going viral. It's going to 10 million views. What if you could like bet on the virality of that thing? And what if you had to purchase a like? And what if each subsequent like rewarded you with fees for having liked the video early? Maybe you'd be more inclined to bet on that thing. And then over time, as the thing accumulates more likes, it kind of evens out. And then you watch the video and you're like, oh, it already has 10 million likes. It's gonna be hard for it to hit 100 million, and my stake is already pretty diluted. So maybe I go and find some new content worth consuming, and I try to find some like new unique videos that people haven't found yet, and I go and like those. So you're like playing this game of TCRs where you're trying to like find useful things to express things about because it's like in your economic best interest to do so.
You're like monetizing hipsterness. It's like,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And so like that concept on its own may be interesting, but then you like combine it with the other ones where it's like, oh, you got like maybe you don't want to play this. You don't want to like bad things that don't align with your reputation because then you're building like a reputation that's not like evident of you. And maybe it goes against the functional pillar because if you're liking things that you don't want to come back to later, then you're diluting your feed with the stuff that you don't care about. And then the educational pillar, your friends look at you and they're like, yo, this guy is just liking random stuff. It's not useful. I'm going to not follow him anymore. So I think like the full picture in its entirety maybe gets people claiming things about things, but who knows? We'll see.
right. If you have any sort of reputation system, people are going to wrap them in contracts and then sell them. So like, how do you prevent that? How do you think about that? Do you instantly go to like, well, this is the end game, so let's do it? Or do you just hope that people aren't that shitty?
So like I think in like the current paradigm of attestations and verifiable claims/credentials, it's very hard to sell your reputation because you got to sell a private key unless you're using abstract accounts in which you have to sell your whole account with all your reputation. And in that scenario, like I guess you could do that. But like you can't just sell like fragments of your reputation because you're associating like the attestation or the verifiable credential with like some thing that is like your whole identity, I guess.
Yeah, no, I like it. I mean, for now, like I think people would do it, as long as because like I think the big thing for whether or not this works is it's kind of like with Oracle data at the moment. Like most Oracle data out there, like people don't actually pay for. Like most people aren't paying for price feeds from Chainlink. Like Chainlink just pushes them on and pays for it with like token sales, and
Yep.
and so the whole thing works. Whereas obviously, like if projects who were using Chainlink's feed had to pay the gas costs to put them on, it would be like nobody would be doing. It's like we'd be picking different solutions.
For sure.
And then, but like with this one too, I think it's going to be interesting to see which one of these things sort of wins out, in the long run, and how we build and how you guys build it. Because like if you get a whole bunch of people on, like if similar, like if you're leveraging social graphs and it's very reputational and educational, then you can get boatloads of data that's really really useful for free. Whereas if it's like all economic, then like which is a lot of crypto, then it just like turns into something that's probably unsustainable in some ways.
For sure. Yeah. And you can, the cool thing is you can do both. Like, you don't have to do anything on chain if you don't want to. But if you want like some of the functionality of the system and you want to unlock like some pillars, then you got to post the things on chain. But you can kind of like entirely traverse things off chain if you want to. And you can entirely create data off chain if you want to. So
Over here, like you could aggregate obviously stuff in the contract on base, but like if somebody just had boatloads of attestations that they were broadcasting on some peer-to-peer network, you could just go grab them, right, and
yeah.
throw them in. But yeah, no, it would be
The attestations on like peer-to-peer net, like off-chain stuff is it's hard to introduce like economics into that equation, because if the cost to create attestation is zero, it's just I don't know how to like it's very hard to prevent the gamification of that. So you need to introduce like some arbitrary cost, just like any blockchain does, if you want to.
well, unless you had really strong reputational games,
Right. That's why I think
right?
later you can do that. But like we need intuition first so that we can dog food intuition to get the
Yep.
reputation of things to give them the reward. So yeah, but I agree.
Well, because that's like with our like CPI idea, the problem with like if you want to do a survey of thousands of people for every price point across the globe, it's really really expensive really really quickly if you have to pay gas in any meaningful form.
For sure.
So like how do you sort of do that? And it's like it would be fine if you just like paid people their reputation, just straight to them, and then say don't pay gas, just broadcast it, send it over to me, we'll call it a day. Um, and yeah, and I think that'll be probably what takes off.
There's
Uh,
actually like once we migrate to our two token system, there's a really nice feature that is delegation, where like I can't go too much into detail about how the two token system works right now, but like you can delegate your like ability to create data to someone else. So like let's say you're trying to collect a specific type of data, you can say, "Hey users, please go create this data," and you'll have equity in the data and you'll get revenue from having created the data, if the data is deemed useful later. So like you can give them the purchasing power to create the data. So it's free to them. You're paying the cost, but you're also giving them some equity in it so they can have access to the future revenue streams of it. Which I think like it's very interesting for that use case and some other ones. But
for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
no, high reputation individuals.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like you don't it feels worse like giving people just like straight up ETH. It's like, here, I'll give you I'll give you the ETH that's required to pay the gas cost to attest these things. It's like, that doesn't feel so good. But giving people some valueless thing that is only used within the system of the ecosystem of smart contracts to like create data with. Like the only thing you can do with this thing is create data intuition. Here you go. Here's some, and please create this data. And if you don't, then you don't get those tokens.
Right. Like Vitalik, can you delegate your review ability and write some reviews on travel socks for me?
Yeah,
Go get
exactly.
all the celebrities. It'll be
Yeah.
for sure. No, that's cool. All right, well, coming up here kind of on the hour, like did I miss anything crucial first, like that we talked about thing?
I'm really bad at this because there's so much and I forget what we talked about, but I think this was pretty good. I feel like
Okay.
all we do at the end of the day is we let people claim things about things. I think the data gets produced in a way that is much easier to use. I guess that's one thing I want to touch on just real quick. It's just like our whole objective is making attestations useful by one, getting more attestations about things, and then two, cleansing the data so we can actually like do complex reputation stuff on top of it. Because it's like if you look at the ecosystem right now, we are falling into the same pitfalls of Web 2. We've got standard fragmentation, we've got schema fragmentation. It's like, okay, like how do I know that like this field in this schema means the same thing as this field in this schema? This one's like camel case first name, this one's first dash name used by with a hyphen, and people are using that in different contexts. Like I don't, it's really hard to understand like explicitly what the data is trying to say sometimes. And so all we're trying to do is get more good data and give people the tools to use the data for like more complex use cases. So I don't know. With that being said, I don't think there's too much else. This was awesome. I loved this session.
Super cool. Um, yeah, and I guess if you had the one word, I mean,
Oh,
like it's like coming back to it, it's obviously like you could say like aggregation, attestation aggregation layer, be like super specific, but
it could be aggregation's been thrown around a couple of times, like attestation aggregator, verifiable data aggregator. Ah, man, take three shots.
yeah, I mean, like I was thinking, like, is there a way you could gamify it? You could say like, yeah, like I don't know, like reputational restaking to go after your eigenlayer
Oh,
shirts. So, yeah.
dude. Oh, composable modular reputation restaking. That's it.
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah. Anyway, no, this was
AI.
super fun. Where can people find out more about intuition?
Go to intuition.systems to see our website. New page is launching soon. And lots of new stuff launching soon. Stuff that you can interact with as either a developer or an end user. So stay tuned by going to the website, sign up for mailing lists, go to our Twitter, follow us on Twitter. We're OX Intuition. We're also on Warpcast. We're Intuition and OX Intuition over there. I think our website has all of the links that you would need. So just go to the website first and then you can launch out to everywhere else. But yeah, expect us soon. We're coming. I'm excited. Would love to talk to anyone who wants to talk to us. I'm Billy at intuition.systems. So if you want to shoot me an email, I'm around. I'm OX Billy on Twitter. So you can also DM me there, although my DMs are a little bit of a mess. But yeah, that's all I got.
Super cool. Anyway, thanks so much, Billy. Talk to you later.
Thanks so much, man. Talk to you soon.